In the minds of many publishers, the concept of horror games is an antiquated one. AAA developers have long stopped putting out horror games, but over the last couple of years, indie developers have picked up the slack and developed many beloved horror games. Now Shinji Mikami, the man responsible for a very specific brand of horror games, returns to the genre with the backing of Bethesda to bring back the AAA horror game. Does he succeed in revitalizing survival horror? Does he succeed in outdoing his last effort in that territory? Let's see, shall we? Detective Sebastian Castellanos is on his way to investigate a grisly murder scene in an asylum, when all of a sudden this happens. From this point on, the game throws the player on constantly escalating encounters in a myriad of environments. Good horror is steeped in the unknown, and in Evil Within, you never know what is going to happen next. Every time you get used to one kind of encounter, enemy or environment, the game throws you into another one, creating a constant atmosphere of uncertainty. This is further enforced by the fact that due to the story taking place in the characters' minds, it's a long story, literally anything could happen next, but the progression is always grounded enough to be relatable and understandable. But the exact nature of what happened, the role of Ruvik, the main antagonist, as well as the character's seemingly loose grasp on reality, lives at the heart of the mystery that drives the Evil Within's plot. Speaking of the story, it is one of the definite low points of the game. While the mysteries presented are interesting enough to keep you going, and the way information is fed to you is engaging and creepy enough. Like many Stephen King novels, the questions raised are more interesting than the answers given. None of the characters are memorable or especially defined. We have main character, ally, bad guy, shifty scientist, and girl. Girl has to get special mention. When I heard that they got Jennifer Carpenter from Dexter to play her, I was hoping she would play a tough, no-nonsense taken policewoman. But, well, her dialogue mostly comprises of
Help! There's too many of them! Get me out of this thing!
Fuck balls, you're serious.
I couldn't even tell you their names anymore. The only real exceptions are the villain, Ruvik, that gets a backstory you uncover throughout the game, and the main character, Sebastian, whose diary entries you find on your journey, which hint at some interesting things, but that never get followed up on. On top of that, there are many aspects about the plot that get hinted at, but never fully resolved. Some of these may be answered in future DLC, or may have been left out for the sequel. The game's graphics are a double-edged sword. While most of the game is beautifully atmospheric with great lighting and environmental effects like fog, further enforced by the gorgeously horrific, eerie and just plain creepy art design, technical difficulties like mushy textures, texture pop-in, and an uneven frame rate keep the game from reaching its graphical potential. Especially environments set during the day look really dated. I mean, damn, that skybox looks on par with the first Devil May Cry. These problems definitely hurt the game, but where it shines is the gameplay. The game is a third-person shooter with the clear DNA of Resident Evil 4, with some modern updates like a free-moving camera and a stealth system. But where Resident Evil 4 was about fighting overwhelming amounts of enemies, Evil Within heavily scales back the enemy numbers as well as your ammo. As a fan of survival horror games, I love the fact that the game always gave me just enough bullets to get by, but never enough to feel comfortable. And I couldn't just rely on bullets either. I had to hide, sneak, use stealth kills, and use the weapons at my disposal in creative ways just to get out of situations with barely enough left to get by. To survive. This created a constant state of dread that made me question whether I could keep going or if the next encounter would be my last. And due to the game's great design, I could always get by, if just barely. When I died, and it happened quite a bit, it was mostly due to bad decisions or some bad luck. Most situations I died in could be resolved second time in as I adapted my strategies and tried new things. This to me is the essence of good survival horror, making things tough and unnerving, but fun and engaging enough to keep you going. Your ability to use many different strategies apart from aiming at heads and shooting at heads is what made the game so engaging and kept me going. Careful planning combined with improvisation once shit goes tits up is key. A great gameplay aspect that enforces the improvisational tactics is your ability to use matches to burn bodies as well as certain environmental objects and enemies. If you manage to ground an enemy, you can go up to him and burn him for an instant kill. If you manage to lure another enemy into the fire radius, you can kill multiple enemies that way and save ammo. But you can't hold too many matches, so you can't rely on them constantly. This design reminds me a lot of the Crimson Heads in the Resident Evil remake. The fact that you can burn pretty much all bodies, but don't know which ones might get back up, is just one of the great risk-reward systems in the game. Another is the expansive upgrade system. Throughout the game you find green gel, both in the environment as well as after killing enemies. This gel can be used to upgrade your character as well as your weapons. But there are so many things to upgrade that maxing them all out in one playthrough is impossible. That means that for every choice you make, something is won and something is lost. Do you want to run longer? Good, but that might mean that you can't upgrade the accuracy of your weapon or the amount of ammo you can carry. This system also allows you to tailor your character's abilities to your playstyle. Another risk-reward system is the inclusion of traps. The levels are littered with traps. You could either disarm the traps to get materials with which you could build ammo for your crossbow, or just walk past. If you want to disarm the bombs, you have to play a little minigame. That is not very easy since it requires very precise timing. So if you want to take the risk, be willing to experience this. My preferred strategy was to walk past most traps and make a mental note of them. That way I could lead enemies into them once I get spotted. There are also traps that you can freely trigger, further opening the doors for improvisational tactics. What your arsenal lacks in numbers, it makes up for in diversity. Every weapon you find serves a very specific purpose. The crossbow deserves very special mention, as it is a regular Swiss army knife of a weapon with 4 very diverse arrows that you can craft that can help you in many different situations. Due to great feedback and sound design, the weapons are all very satisfying to use, especially the shotgun, one of the most visceral headshots in gaming history. Oh, also, I love the fact that you can actually unlock new weapons for your New Game Plus playthrough, one of which is a completely new weapon type. It's the little details like this that keep the game fun, even though the overall atmosphere is very grim and dire and your ammo scarce. One very interesting aspect are keys you find throughout the game. The game features save rooms that are heavily reminiscent of old Resident Evil games, but feature some nice twists. One of those are a collection of lockers that you can open with the keys you collect. Each of them has different content, from ammo to upgrade gel. This introduces an aspect of gambling into the game. You never know what you are going to get. Luckily the items stay in there until you need them. So the locker room serves as your personal emergency stash. An aspect I wish was more pronounced were the game's puzzles. While there are a handful of puzzles in the game that are tonally quite interesting, they are both too simple as well as too infrequent. A few more intricately designed puzzles could have really helped some of the later parts of the game. Shinji Mikami is great at subverting your expectations. If you played the Resident Evil remake or Resident Evil 4, you know this. You think zombies who kill stay dead? Yeah, no. You think headshots are a good idea? Nope, they're not. They're really not. And little surprises like that keep you on your toes are also present in Evil Within. Surprises I obviously don't want to spoil. While your most common enemy evokes the Ganados from Resident Evil 4, later enemies are both diverse and creative. One enemy that was kinda underwhelming is Ruvik, unfortunately. While he can be quite scary, he has one big problem. There is a place in the game where he can appear pretty much at any time. When this happens, all you can do is run around until he gets bored and disappears. While this was quite tense the first 1 or 2 times, sooner or later it just turns into busy work and can also get quite ridiculous. Even worse, he can sometimes teleport directly in front of you, killing you instantly as soon as he touches you. Scary, yes, but also very annoying. It's situations like this, along with the overall lack of polish, that keep the game from fulfilling all its potential. The boss encounters are all wildly different and don't always follow a simple shoot-to-kill route. While 1 or 2 of them are dangerously close to being too hard and frustrating, I didn't die more than a couple of times at most, which is alright in my opinion, but your mileage may vary. The exception is the last boss, which is very high on spectacle, but very low on actual gameplay. It is also probably the easiest boss in the game. Overall, the game was one of the most tense gaming experiences I had in recent years. Whether it be the creepy, foreboding atmosphere, the fact that anything could happen next, or, most importantly, your inability to survive without getting creative. I love the fact that every encounter could be my last if I didn't use my environment, my equipment, as well as my upgrade gel in smart ways. Every time I was spotted, I had to quickly decide whether I want to fight, use traps, my matches, or run away to hide. And there are few moments as pulse-pounding as having to fight a boss at close range with a sniper rifle because it's the only ammo you have left. The game is great at foreshadowing and made me constantly go, I don't want to go in there, there's bad stuff in there. Why the fuck would I go in there? Are you high? Oh yeah, that looks like a place I want to wander into. Sure, there are no crazy ex-murderers there. You know what, how about I just stay in here? Yeah, I'm just gonna stay in here. It's cool. No, I'm cool. I'm cool. Roll credits, man. Boogeyman can't get me here. Roll credits. Roll credits. While some of the later chapters lose a lot of the atmosphere that permeated most of the game due to the fact that they take place in broad daylight and open spaces, they still manage to put you in some creative and tense situations that keep the gameplay interesting. My favorite parts of the game were the open-ended sandbox-style levels that are filled with enemies and leave the choice of how to tackle them up to you. The first one plays like the first village part in Resident Evil 4, with the addition of a stealth system. I was sneaking around. Once I got caught, I used traps in the environment, shot guys when I felt lucky, and just barely got away with my life. And it was a blast. While I wish the game had more of these spots than it has, the other spots are diverse enough that even if you don't like a level, the next one is pretty much guaranteed to be different. I played the game on the survivor difficulty, and while it was tough, I never got to a situation I couldn't master, even though I never felt comfortable with the amount of resources I had, as it should be. So if you like survival horror games, play on Survivor. The game features a generous checkpoint system that should keep frustration low, even though the loading times could be shorter. Especially in some encounters with arbitrary binary fail states, the checkpoint system will come in handy. So if you ever liked survival horror games, especially Resident Evil games, and like games that take power away from you as opposed to being a power fantasy, this game definitely deserves a look. While it may be too clunky, unpolished, unfocused, old-fashioned, or even unfair for some people, I found the gameplay extremely rewarding and the difficulty just right with very few exceptions that did detract from the game, but didn't turn me off. Maybe it's because some of these qualities are emblematic of old horror games I love. While this will probably be a very divisive game and doesn't come close to its creator's earlier works, it is a game that every fan of horror should at least check out. Just know what you're getting into.